Well, folks, it's time for more custom cards. This time around, we have alternate versions of characters we know using the Mercenaries artwork. So often, like amped up, crazy, evolved versions of well known characters like this here, mutated Mukla from Kogeti. And this one's this one's going to be hotly debated. So I wanted to put it first. Go ahead and get your comments ready. This is a 10 mana 13/13, and I'm not sure if it's genius or horrifying, because the battle cry will transform half of all cards into bananas wherever they are. So that means your cards, your opponent's cards, hand and deck, half of them are going to now be bananas. So this is bananas as far as effects are concerned, because it's like the ultimate disruption tool. It's like Ticketus and Bad Luck Albatross combined into this horrifying monstrosity. It really doesn't even have a condition. It's just, you have to get to 10 mana essentially to rip this. And like clearly, any deck that has like combo stuff, this is going to completely shut it down. If they're relying on absurd value, theoretically this shuts it down. But interestingly, it also affects you. So there is, some balance here and some symmetry that might make this sort of okay, because it is just a 10 mana card in a lot of ways right now. Like Ticketus can do the same thing more or less non-symmetrically. Now, so I don't know. What do you think? Would this be the most toxic card in Hearthstone history? Is it just too easy? Is the symmetry enough to make it balanced? I don't really know. This is the kind of card I don't think it ever really see play or be printed, because it's just like so horrifying and so scary. But I almost kind of think it'd be okay. But I'm curious to hear more thoughts. Regardless, this is a really cool take on this artwork here of Mukla. He's so radiated and mutated that he's also mutating cards into bananas, because that's what he loves. So fantastic delivery on the flavor here, the effect. I'm curious to hear thoughts. All right, so next up here is Millhouse Netherstorm. I love this version of Millhouse. He's turned to the dark arts with this orb. So no longer a mage, he's now a warlock. This card from Ragna is a 4-mana 4/4 with Battlecry. Shuffle a Fell Blast into your deck. Fell Blast is a 10-mana spell that deals 10 damage to all characters. So if you just look at that straight up in an honest way, this could be a great board clear and big time damage output on your opponent's face with some symmetry that's risky. You take damage that could be bad to clear your own board. But on that note, with a card like the Demon Seed in the game, Ragna here built in a really cool finisher synergy for Fell Blast, where after you've completed the Demon Seed, if you draw this essentially deals 20 damage to the enemy hero. 10 for what you would have taken that the Demon Seed redirects, and the normal 10 as well. So it becomes this like incredible finisher tool. And on that note, Fell Blast is probably too good, right? Like all you gotta do is shuffle it in. Warlock draws a ton of cards. There's not a lot of downside. It's playing Millhouse. It might be cooler if it said like shuffle one into both players' decks. Your opponent's cost 0 or something to kind of keep the flavor of Millhouse consistent, where he's got this real downside. And like, yes, there's a downside by damaging yourself, but not really in Warlock. So a lot of cool stuff here. I love this transformation of Millhouse from a flavor standpoint. Card's pretty cool how well it synergizes in Warlock, just perhaps a little scary and maybe too good with the way Warlock is these days anyway. But, down the road, minus Demon Seed, this is a really cool card and fun idea. Moving on to Cornelius, the Protector from the TF Boy, a neutral 5-mana 4/7 legendary taunt and start of game. If your deck has no spells, both heroes can only take up to 10 damage a turn this game. So the TF Boy is sick of big crazy OTKs. They want to limit damage output, and Cornelius could do that, but of course with a notable downside here that you're not able to run spells. You have to be a strict minion deck, which is actually pretty punishing. Most every deck runs a handful of spells, and they're often very important to give you a little bit of instant play and some reactivity often. So kind of risky in commitment here, but in a combo meta, a card like this could really shake things up and, create some problems for those combo decks. So, we've had crazy combo metas lately. There are some cards out there that are a little disruptive, but this could be like the ultimate tool to make sure you're playing honest Hearthstone. Is that too much for the game? Like, is this just shut down combo decks too hard? Yeah, maybe. I'm curious to hear thoughts on Cornelius here as well. But I at least like the idea where this one's heading. The philosophy of this card is cool. Maybe it could be like 15 or something instead. I don't think he needs taunt for the record either. I could make some tweaks here and there, but I think this is an interesting discussion point at the very least at this like anti-combo card. Super hard right from start of game. Heading over here to Mookla's Secret Stash from Soul Mass. This is a 3-mana spell for Hunter. And initially I didn't think about spells, but hey, there's a handful of great spells in this video. And this one will give 5 bananas randomly to your friendly beasts. So this is a really nice buff. Essentially 5/5 buff here for 3 mana. That is certainly better than something like a Blessing of Kings. But, you know, some downsides technically in that it has to be on beasts specifically. If you don't have any beasts, it's stranded, it's randomly distributed, so things may not line up well from a math standpoint, might get a little awkward sometimes. So I like this, a little bit of give and take on this, feels really balanced to me. I think it also references probably, I think the ability for Mercenaries is very similar to this too, so it kind of pulls that in from the artwork itself and the character for Mercenaries. So all in all, this is a really clean, elegant spell that looks very realistic to me. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see this exact card show up in Hearthstone. So here we've got another Hunter card. This one is the evolved version of King Crush Primal Lord, and it's from Dat Mage Doe. I think it also technically borrows from Mercenaries a little bit. I can't remember all the abilities, but it's a 9-mana 8/10 beast with battle cry, attack the lowest health enemy. If it dies, repeat this. So essentially Crush here, pretty cool card. It can essentially help you tidy up a board. Say there's like 3 3/3s on board, right? Crush is going to kill all 3 of those 3/3s. He'll still be alive at 1 health, and then he'll hit the enemy face as well. So he's just like incredibly high output turn. You know, if the board is big enough, he may not get to go face, and then he's kind of like a Deathwing Mad Aspect of sorts, but one that's more likely to trade well just based on the size of minions, or at least you have a little bit of predictability and control and influence over that sometimes for how Crush will actually attack. So you might be able to make it work out really nicely where he kind of finishes on an 8/8 or something, right? In a really clean way. So I like cards like this. It's really cool. It's got face damage potential, which Hunter loves. It's got some board clear potential. It fits the flavor of the character very well. Absolute home run. I think this is a very realistic card as well. It's good. It's very powerful, but 9-mana legendaries have to be, right? It has to be this big home run hit. It's a little bit reminiscent of a card like Illidari Inquisitor of sorts. I think that's fine. It's a legendary. It's 9 mana. It has to be that good. So I think this actually delivers really, really well. So before we move on to the next card, let's talk about our sponsor for this video, Keeps. Yeah, if you didn't know, 2 out of 3 dudes will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35 years old. My clock is quickly diminishing on that one. But the cool thing with Keeps is you don't need to go to a doctor's office to get your hair loss prescription. You can visit a doc online and get the medication delivered straight to your door, making it easy as can be. So if you're noticing that you're losing your hair, do something about it. For a limited time, you can go to keeps.com/Regis for 50% off your first order. Check the link in the description. So moving on here, this one's pretty crazy. This is Anacondra the Deadly Thorn from Ragnus the King, an 8-mana 3/7 battle cry for the rest of the game. Cards in your opponent's hand and deck are thorny, and a great mock-up here of a thorny card. It's got some cool effect drawn on there. That means that it will deal 1 damage to the player who draws or plays them from hand. So essentially adding up to a lot of chip damage over the course of the game, especially if your opponent's like spamming a lot of cards. This punishes that, which I love. I get sick of watching people play like 20 cards a turn and just do a million things. They suddenly take 20 damage if they do that. But here's the crazy part. A second card was submitted later from Minivat, which has almost the exact same design. I think they're both cool and good in different ways. Minivat's is Thornweaver Anacondra. It reads Battlecry, cover each card in your opponent's hand with thorns. His has a little bit of a different artwork, but also mocked it up. Thorned, after you play a thorned card, take 1 damage. So Minivat's is lower cost. It only affects cards in hand. It's kind of a one-time thing. So, you know, if they have like 8 cards in hand, that might be 8 total damage over the course of the game. So a little bit lower impact. Anacondra Deadly Thorn from Ragnus is like game-wide. I think I like Ragnus's version a little better. It is quite expensive at 8 mana. That may come down too late, but I like the universality of it. The draw and play is like stacking up a lot faster, essentially. So it feels more game-winning in a way, whereas Minivat's, I don't know if it'd be enough. Like just 5 mana, like they're maybe only gonna take 3 or 4 damage. They're just keep playing the game. They can keep cards in hand if they get desperate. They're just drawing more. So I don't think it's quite as decisive or quite as big. There's probably some middle ground here between the two of these. It's actually the sweet spot, but I just thought it was really cool how these cards were so darn similar because this artwork's really good to build off of. It's really inspiring how she's working with these thorns. So not all that surprising that the ideas were so similar, but very, very cool. Next up here is Blood of Manaroth from Rob K, a 5 mana warrior legendary spell. This one's really sick. It gives +2/+2 to all minions in your hand, deck, and battlefield. So insane buff, actually kind of like Invigorating Sermon a little bit, that Paladin card, but I think the fact that this is, twice as much buff for only 1 more mana really ups the ante and makes it, good as opposed to Invigorating Sermon, which isn't good. But there's this crazy downside. You take 1 damage for each minion buffed. So, theoretically, if you had 29 other cards that were all minions and you played this, you might take 29 damage from playing Blood of Manaroth. More realistically, you might be taking 10, 15, upwards of 20, depending on how your deck is structured. So that may just be too much damage. Like it's probably not worth it as a 5 mana play. It might take too long to get all those stats into play, but Warrior has a lot of health to work with. They can create long game states where those stats really start to stack up. You could easily envision other cards being printed that synergize off of Warriors taking damage in some way, right? So although I don't know that this would fit particularly well into Hearthstone immediately, I could definitely see a world where a card like this makes sense. And of course, it tells a great classic Warcraft story very simply, and the effect matches up to that really nicely. So I like this card a lot. It's not perfect today, but I think there's a moment in time somewhere where this card could be really, really cool. Moving on here to Gruul, Dragon Killer from Edgy Paladin. I want more Gruul in my life. This Gruul's an 8 mana 9/9, and he's basically like a super recruit sort of effect. Battlecry, summon 3 random dragons from your deck, and then fight them. So ideally here, you'd probably want some Death Rattle dragons, say 2 Plagued Protodrakes, for instance, would be really cool. So you get a couple 7-drops and then like a 3rd dragon left behind because Gruul dies before he kills the last one. Alternatively, you can just run 3 really big dragons and Gruul could lose the fight against the first dragon and like summon you 3 12/12s or whatever, right? There's a couple different angles here to take Gruul. Even like 3 small dragons that had like cool death rattles, some 1/1s with death rattle upsides. Those don't exist today, but they could, Gruul could just murder a bunch of tiny dragons and do something cool off that. So I like this idea of like this just super recruit effect, big style effect, and really plays to Gruul being the dragon killer. So some ways that this might work just fine nowadays, and of course, lots to play off of here as well. So give me more Gruul in my life. All right, so finally here we've got the Thunder Fused Geddon, and I saved this one for last because I think it's going to be a decisive one, kind of like the first card, because I think right now it's just a little too good, but I think it delivers on this artwork so well and like captures this mechanic of elementals, kind of tied into this artwork so nicely. So Thunder Fused Geddon's a 7 mana 7/7 from Lycan Shadow. Battlecry reads, if you cast a spell and played an elemental last turn, deal 7 damage to all enemies. So you've got this fusing of the 2 different kinds of elemental triggers we've seen before. A spell last turn and an elemental last turn. You've noticed Shaman has used both of those. And you've got this idea of a Geddon here who's kind of fused his fieriness with this like lightning and wind side of him as well. So you're getting these kind of like 2 things built together into this like super version of a card. So you get this insane result. Deal 7 damage to all enemies is just amazing. That's almost more Dresh here, but instead of having this like game long condition, you just kind of have to have 1 turn to set up Geddon. So that's very powerful, clearly a huge swing, and really not that hard to achieve. Playing a spell and an elemental together is not a big deal once you get to 6 mana, for instance. This is one of those cards where it just like looks kind of perfect to me. Maybe too strong, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if this got printed in modern day Hearthstone. So what do you think? Is this just too crazy good? Are you as sold on the like flavor and feel of this card as much as I am? I'm curious to hear it. And that said, that wraps it up here for our custom cards based on Mercenaries artwork. Some pretty cool stuff here. I love this artwork of Mercenaries. I'm not playing Mercenaries, but there's so many cool characters and storylines here, like Millhouse, this crazy orb. And a lot of these cards deliver on that nicely. So thanks everybody for submitting these. That said, of course, check the description below to submit your cards for next time around for the next custom cards video. Share your thoughts on these in the comments below. Thanks much as always for watching. Check out our sponsor for this video in the description as well. And until next time, game on.